Welcome back to the Super League Championship. I've got Sean McLaren here with me. We watched a kind of unfortunate match from your perspective just now.
Yeah, things didn't go my way for sure. I got kind of put in a bunch of spots I didn't want to be in, and yeah,
Yeah, game one actually, when you and Cheon both drew your opening hands, I was like, oh well, Cheon's down a game because
yeah,
his hand was pretty bad and yours was a little land heavy, but not too bad. And then you just drew like land, 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 disdainful stroke, and it's just like, all right, well, I
yeah.
guess this isn't going anywhere.
That'll do it pretty much. And then game two, I was yeah, sort of the opposite end of the spectrum, having not enough lands, and Chiang also had a good start, and yeah.
Yeah, so game two is actually kind of interesting. So you mulligan a hand that a number of people I think would have kept. I actually, myself included. I'm curious, kind of, why what your thought process was there, because certainly not claiming I'm right. I'm just curious what led you down that path.
My thought process was I didn't have any of my important cards for the matchup, and both my lands came into play tapped. So I only had two lands. So first of all, I would need to draw a third untapped land to play my Mantis Rider. I didn't have Radiant Flames or Virulent Plague, which I really wanted. So it was very close. I feel, but I'm kind of think it's still a mulligan, even though it didn't work out. Like I had a turn two Jace, which is what I was hoping for. But again, I didn't see Radiant Flames or a Virulent Plague anyways, so
Yeah, I think in game one, mulligan that hand would actually just be insane. But
yeah,
once you have a bunch of cards that are like 8 out of 10s, 9 out of 10s, 10 out of 10s in the matchup, that does change things a lot. So that makes sense. I mean that is a certainly good reasoning for it, which is kind of the interesting part. That whether you get there or not doesn't really affect that too much.
sure.
But yeah, and then of course you didn't draw the third land. I did like keeping Tassiger on top, by the way. That was also a controversial call, but I agree with your play there.
Yeah, I was just put in so many bad spots, like,
Yeah, yeah.
and then and then the last turn, I'm like, well, if I Fiery Impulse and he has anything, I instantly lose, but I pretty much lose if he has anything, anyways. So
Yeah, I that's one of the features of playing against Atarco Red is that they don't give you a whole lot of time to draw out of any particular situation. So when you keep a hand that's a little heavy on lands or a little light on lands, it's not like the Jeskai Mirror against Esper where maybe you have four or five draw steps. You have sometimes like two or three draw steps, and as it turned out, the cards didn't fall your way.
yeah, and my list I feel is particularly bad against Atark Red as well. I don't have Soulfire Grandmasters, and I kind of shaved a little bit of removal. I have two utter ends, that sort of thing. I was expecting more of a control metagame, possibly.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people were doing. And that's why Chian, I believe, played that deck. And speaking of that, the next matchup we have is Paul Rietzl against Eric Froehlich, and Paul Rietzl's on red-green landfall, with Eric Froehlich being on Esper Dragon. So let's go ahead and take a look at Paul Rietzl's deck list here. And this isn't dramatically different from what you just played against. Basically, you replace the token making, like Dragon Fodder and Hordeling Outburst, with burlier creatures like Scythe Leopard and Snapping Gnarlid, and then of course the full-on amount of combo pieces with 4 Become Immense, 4 Battle Range, 4 Titan Strength. So certainly an aggressive deck.
Yeah, I think this was the aggressive decks were good metagame calls, and especially this one I like a lot, knowing that Gabby and Li Shi-Chan 3-0'd. That when that happened, I was sort of like, I should just play green-red landfall and sort of roll through their Dirtling by comboing off. So I think this was a good choice if you expect ramp or rally decks.
Yeah, it does not give them a whole lot of time, and if you expect people to shave, some of the answers, like you said, you played a list that's slightly biased towards other control decks or combo decks versus, or mid-range decks versus aggro decks, which is something we've seen. I mean, when you've got a very small field, especially when you have someone like, Cheon in the mix who played some kind of Esper list almost the entire time, all of a sudden showing up with the opposite of that is going to hopefully catch people by surprise.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it looks like they're ready to go. We're going to go ahead and see Red Green Landfall against Esper Dragons coming up right now.
Can you hear me?
Welcome back to the Super League Championship here. I'm Lou Scott Vargas here with Sean McLaren, and we're watching Eric Froehlich play against Paul Rietzl with classic control versus aggro matchup. And Eric's hand size seems to have shrunk dramatically. The first one we saw was not very good.
That just was a dramatic 7 down to 4.
That was the fastest 7-4 that I've ever seen in my life.
It's just like mulligan, mulligan, mulligan.
And did Eric start with 4 cards? Let's see. Looks like he's only got 4 in his hand right now after playing his card for turn 1, so it looks like that might be the case.
Looks like it, yeah. And Paul's hand is fantastic, so this is probably going to be a quick one.
Yeah, we're going to have a quick set of matches here, it looks like. And, Paul just had 1 drop into 2 drop into 3 drop, and that's going to be pretty good. He does have a Teamer Battle Rage, which is kind of stranded, because right now it doesn't it deals 3 damage if he wants to cast it, which isn't great. But obviously having that in hand means that any subsequent draws of pump spells makes it very dangerous.
Yeah, this match is going so fast. It's like they're playing lightning mode.
Well, both these players play a lot of Magic Online. Paul actually plays more Magic Online than any 3 people I know. So they're both well acquainted with F6ing, F8ing, and just running through their turns super quickly. Yeah. So we're gonna see it. This game 1 is gonna last like 2 minutes.
And rebuying a sackland is actually a really nice interaction for Den Protector with the landfall creatures.
Den Protector is a huge addition to this deck, yeah.
Yeah, it's not often you see rebuying a land, but it actually has the added value of giving an extra pump.
I think that Den Protector is kind of what this deck needed. We tested this deck a lot before the Pro Tour and never really added Den Protectors, and because this is a deck that wants to play 20 lands that wants to draw 5 land every game, but it can't draw too many lands or it gets flooded, and Den Protector bridges the gap there by acting as extra lands or an expensive spell.
Yeah, it gives it some much-needed resiliency for sort of an all-in combo deck. You can rebuy 1/2 of the combo if you've already tried to go off and it failed. Looks like Jace is going to get to flip here.
Or not. It would have gotten a flip. Technically, that is true. But yeah, that game was kind of a landslide. As we see Paul sideboarding in more control elements, outpost sieges, and taking out spot removal. Kind of giving the deck just like an additional bit of late game power against a bunch of 1-for-1 removal outpost sieges, quite strong. So Eric's camera is lagging a little bit, but I was actually talking to Eric before this started, and he wasn't expecting as much aggro either. So his sideboard does not have as many surges and irrational clerics as he would have otherwise, and his main deck, Esper, is not a deck that's known for its prowess against aggro.
Yeah, I think the Pauls really wanted to just get things moving. Some of our matches the other weeks were taking a long time, so I think they just wanted to really hammer it out.
Yeah, they're getting their wish. They're able to just, so far Pauls haven't dropped a game collectively. So, and Rietzl, you see, also has sideboarded very quickly. He is exactly what he's doing. And Eric, his camera's lagging a little bit, but it looks like we're about to go to game 2 here. So it's interesting that Rietzl's got roast in his deck. I guess that's a concession to Arashan Cleric because Wild Slash won't kill it, whereas Roast will get it out of the way. Also, this is where Deckless come in handy. I think I figured it out. The fact that Eric has two Tassigers in his sideboard makes Roast a lot more plausible of a card than it would be otherwise.
Absolutely. And it also can snipe a Jace, which is not the worst, which is probably going to end up happening here at some point.
I wouldn't be surprised if. Ooh, that draw would have been awesome, the Rending Volley, if Paul had a red source, but of course he can't play Side Leopard on turn 1 and still play a red source. So, yeah, like you said, I wouldn't be surprised if Jace ends up getting roasted here.
There he goes. And interesting that that's kind of a tough decision, I feel, because the Rending Volley and the Roast are good against different things. Like, right now, Rietzl doesn't have an answer to Tassiger.
And Paul could easily play a Tassiger on like turn 4 here. Couldn't play quite on turn 3, but as it turns out, Ifra does not have access to a Tassiger, and Paul's going to get to use the Rending Volley. It looks like, Cinderglade, Monastery, Swift Spear, Rending Volley, attack for 5 is a pretty good turn. Especially given that Eric so far has kept a hand of Jaces and lands and drawn all lands. This match is going to be over in like 5 minutes.
I was going to say, on the plus side, he can activate Shambling Vents, but no Flip Jace, no Shambling Vents.
That might have set a record for fastest Super League match in the history of Super Leagues. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. So there we go. I mean, that was that was a good 4 minutes of gameplay.
That was Aggro decks taking advantage of us poor control players trying to dirtle around.
Well, it looks like you might have to stay up too late if you want to watch the entire Super League tonight. So I guess we're going to cut to a break, and we'll be back in a few minutes with some more matches.